to take a look at using a tool called EtherCap. We're going to use it to break SSL connections. We're going to do something called man in the middling the SSL connection. So SSL, secure socket layer, should always be used when sending sensitive data across networks. So usernames and passwords, that's how we encrypt things. So we should always be using HTTPS instead of HTTP. You won't always find that to be the case. I've certainly found some instances where things were being sent in plain text, and no doubt you will too, but it should be used. So that way, even if we are capturing the traffic with our ARP spoofing, and you can actually try it, like do an ARP spoofing between the Ubuntu machine and the gateway, and then browse to like facebook.com, or, well, we could do it. So let's start our ARP spoofing again. I need that one, obviously, it's blank. There we go. Here's our ARP spoof, and so if I go to facebook.com, let's not be slow. I'll do that backwards or something. No, that should be right. It does tend to get overloaded if you do enough messed up things to it. So let's do this guy. So I opened up my 7 box, Windows 7, which every time I pass by the domain controller, you can probably see I added a domain user. Again, you don't have to have a domain controller. I have it as optional, but I added an extra domain user for it. So every time I'm going past it, you can see like I added a account called Georgia2 with bulbsec1 as the password as a domain admin, but we'll see that a bit later on. Just figuring you probably watched it pop through a couple of times and wondered what it was. So let's actually stop this and do it against that guy. Ubuntu seems to be getting a bit tired of me changing its ARP table. So it said it was 23, I believe. Yes. One other thing I might want to check is make sure that my proc sys, my IPv forwarding is v4 forwarding is still on. That's might turn off with some of the tools that you use. You might find that it automatically resets it when you turn them off, so that could be a problem as well. Yes, it resets to 0, so I want to, well, I could do it just in here. Set that back to 1, so that was probably our problem, that we weren't actually getting data across. But if you're on Windows 7, oh, it's going to actually try and go someplace. Fabulous, I should have set that. So I go to Facebook. Redirects automatically to HTTPS for the login. But if I like put in why are you so slow? It's not like this thing that old. Granted, it probably doesn't have much memory, but it doesn't have to do very much. So I just put in Georgia and password, which is obviously not the right password. But if I come back over here to Wireshark and I look for probably TLS v1, maybe not. It is TLS v1. So So that's not a valid filter, even though should be able to filter on the protocol, but okay, whatever. I just work here, but it will say that the data is encrypted. You will see like the HTTP GET request for Facebook. If we go up far enough, you will see it. But then it is going to have all of the data in SSL, well, TLS v1, which is a newer version of the same sorts of things. Alright, so what we want to do from here is actually get rid of our ARP spoofing. So we are still able to capture the traffic, but we aren't able to see anything interesting. So what we want to do is actually use a tool called EtherCap to see if we can break this SSL connection. This is going to cause a certificate error. And if you're not familiar with how SSL works, there are a couple slides on it, but I encourage you to go a little bit farther than that and do some research about what's up with these certificates and things. So, I mean, there's only so much we can do in the slides. So I'm going to use EtherCap. Text-based interface is going to be ETH0 again. And it's going to do its own ARP spoofing. And this is the syntax for it. And when we stop it, it is going to turn off that IP forwarding. So that is going to be something we're going to need to reset if we want to continue doing ARP spoofing manually. So, oops, 1.23. So again, this does automatically ARP spoof, and you do have to make a couple changes to the setup for EtherCap, which I did show you in the instructions for this setup, so it should be in there. So if you didn't do that, do look back at the instructions, because there are a couple configuration changes you have to make. Alright, so let's come over here, and let's go to Facebook again. Now it says there's a problem with this website security certificate. So it isn't the ARP spoofing that's doing it. It isn't that there's another person sniffing. It's now we've actually man-in-the-middle the SSL connection with EtherCap. It's taking it a step farther and breaking the SSL connection, and we're inserting ourselves inside of that connection. So we do get the certificate error. The browser is not able to verify that it actually has a secure connection to Facebook. So people often click through certificate errors. I know I certainly have. So continue to this website, not recommended, is exactly what I'll do. So that does send me to Facebook. And it looks and feels like Facebook because it is Facebook. The only difference here is that the SSL connection is not secure because we are, in fact, between Facebook and this browser. So you'll get certificate errors when like a certificate is expired or isn't signed by a valid authority, like Nessus will come up and say it has an invalid certificate because it's just the default tenable certificate. But in this case, there actually is someone listening. So Facebook does have a valid certificate. We just have man in the middle of the connection. So now if we do a login, come back over here, have a lot of nonsensical nonsense. So if we go up far enough, because it is seeing all of the stuff that's coming through, we actually see that this time the email, again I set the email as Georgia and the password is password. Obviously Georgia's not an email, and hopefully no one's Facebook password is password, though probably somebody's is. So login.php and Georgia and password. So we are able to get plain text credentials out of it. So if yours is not working, make sure that you have made the changes to the configuration file that were required. So what those are, just show them to you. So if you do a nano and it's Etsy ettercap and etter.com. Just need to make sure that these are both set to 0. They're like 65,000 something by default. And we need to make sure that our IP table rules are uncommented. So under Linux, let's make sure these two are uncommented. Again, there's text explaining all of this and the setup. It is one of the few tools. You do have to make changes too. So just make sure that's working. And another thing to note is that ettercap does turn off that IPv4 forwarding. So you are going to have to turn that back on. So that's why I had that problem when I was trying to show it at the beginning, is that I had used ettercap previously to test it before the video and didn't set that back. So do keep that in mind as well. So this did allow us to get SSL data, but it did rely on the user clicking through the invalid certificate. So maybe there's something we can do to take it one step further.